Welcome to the FasCat podcast. I'm your host, Frank Overton. Some call me the Big Cat. And today we are doing Ask a FasCat number 18. We have 14 user-submitted questions from you about your training that we are going to try to answer. And we got Coach Jake in the house.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
We have been having a in Boulder, in-person, on-site coach meeting this week. We did a photo shoot yesterday, and today we're working together. We're going to record this pod, and usually Jake's over in Indiana, and Allie is here too. Coach Allie, say hi.
Hey.
Allie is here. She's going to help out with questions, and Rachel is even here. But yes, since this is a podcast, it's all good. So 14 user submitted questions. We're going to give away these jerseys to the most thoughtful question and a box of Goo Energy watermelon gels, watermelon blocks, gels, blocks, bars. Not just the sleeve, but the whole box. And if you don't win, that's okay. These jerseys are vintage. They're no longer available, but this jersey, our 2021 jersey, is going to be available next week for you to order just in time for Father's Day. So check it out on our website next week. And in the meantime, let's just get right into it, Jake.
Sounds good. Let's go. Our first question comes from Charles Harrison with an email. He is from Wisconsin. His question is, 3 of the 4 weekends this June, I have some big mountain bike and gravel events that will take 6 to 9 hours to complete. After these events, the calendar towards the beginning of July should be clear, but at the end of the month, I am racing a 200-kilometer gravel event. What do you suggest the weeks before these events look like?
A lot of recovery, Charles. Multiple rest days in a row, massage, yoga, do your recovery modalities, Revo, take naps. A lot of couch time, quality nutrition. For training, I would suggest 1 or 2 gravel simulation rides on the weekends where you're working on 3 things. Number 1, your physiology. That's the duration of the ride and the intensity, the pace. And number 2 is nutrition. Number 3 is equipment. But back to physiology with that duration and pace. This is like what we were podcasting with Ian Boswell, the winner of Unbound Gravel, this past Monday. He was talking about how he goes out and tries to average 20 miles per hour for his training. And even though he's only doing 4 or 5 hours, he says that average speed simulates his gonna simulate the whole thing. And then he says you also want to train your gut, so that's what you want to work on also during these rides. That's the gels, blocks, bars every 30 minutes, about 70 to 90 grams of carbohydrate per hour per kilogram of body weight. And that's go back and listen to that podcast because it was really good. We also have an Unbound Gravel race recap from Coach Isaiah, and he talks about how he trained his gut. You got to practice eating that much, and it's you can do it even on these shorter rides. But kind of like one of the big takeaways from Unbound is you can't just like shove a bunch of food in your mouth for the first time ever and expect it to work, especially when you get to like hour 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. You got to work on it. That's what we mean when we say train your gut. So then the third thing is your equipment. When you go out and do these rides, we're talking, put your bike through the paces, work on your handling skills, tires, which ones are going to work, tire pressure, sealant, plugs. If you flat, no big deal. You're practicing fixing your flat. That's kind of how it works. In fact, you should kind of try to flat because then you're going to practice. And that's, fixing a flat for the first time with tubeless during a gravel race, in the race, that's going to suck. So,
I had an athlete this Unbound struggle for 90 minutes with it because he didn't practice, so he did waste a lot of time.
Yeah, bring your plugs, practice that, bring your extra sealant, CO2 cartridges, and then definitely bring like a little mini handheld pump. That's like your last resort. And then the other thing I would say with regards to equipment, that would include clothing, because it gets generally hot AF in these events. And I would also encourage everyone out there to use their hydration pack on these rides, because you know, you don't necessarily need to use a hydration pack for a 4 or 5 hour gravel ride simulation, but when you do these long ones, you definitely do. And you know, practice wearing it around your back. It's not the same. It's not as comfortable, but well, you know what's not comfortable?
Dehydration.
That's right, cramping. So it's just kind of one of those pro and cons, but practice that in your simulation rides. And hit us up for one-on-one coaching if you want a custom training plan, but apply those principles and you should be good to go. Hard to give you an exact like day-to-day what to do without knowing you better, how old you are, how your training's been going, you know, what the exact specifics are of, you know, the time in between. But, you know, in looking at your plan and, you know, your plan, your data, your performance manager chart, training load, everything, that's all things we covered in one-on-one coaching. But not to give you the upsell, I just wanted to, you know, make a mention of that. So I hope that helps, and good luck in your races.
Let's go to question number 2 from Norm Laird. He posted in the forum. He's from San Diego. I have been haphazardly racing and training for the last 25 years. I'm interested in making bigger, more sustained improvements in my fitness and racing. Last Father's Day, I purchased a FasCat Sweet Spot training package. Those go on sale in a week. I struggled to make time in my schedule, get the workouts done, and didn't make the green all the time. My question is this: when I ride in an unstructured way and accumulate sweet spot intensities during a ride, does it elicit the same training effect as stricter blocks of sweet spot training as prescribed in your programs?
So, good question, Norm. Short answer, no. Long answer is kind of sort of maybe. And riding non-structured produces some physiological adaptations, but generally not as much as the structured workouts on a time basis. So by doing the structured workouts, you're allowing us to push you probably further than you're going to push yourself when you're riding unstructured, because what you're going to do is go ahead and ride unstructured, and you're going to get to that point where it's uncomfortable for you and you're probably going to stop. And so say that you're good with like 45 minutes of sweet spot unstructured, and then but say your training plan has you doing like 5 by 10 minutes on sweet spot. That's going to be just past your point of comfort level, and by following it, you're going to push yourself, and then you're going to expand out your range. So generally, this is why we say FTFP, follow the plan, and I guarantee it will produce better results than riding in a non-unstructured way. But yeah, that's what when we talk about FTFP, making it turn green every day, try it, and I bet you'll see greater gains than you are now. And again, I think the theme of this podcast is going to turn into, you know, if you want one-on-one coaching and you'd like someone to hold you accountable, that's what we call an accountability buddy. If you'd like someone to design you a custom plan and to revise that plan when life comes at you, that's one-on-one coaching. But when you are on one of our plans, like you are, we really do encourage you to follow it as best as you can for the best results.
Our third question comes from Brian Barra on the forum. He is a longtime FasCat athlete coached by Coach Isaiah. His question is, in your 7 habits of master cyclists, the number 1 habit is riding in the morning. However, due to my work schedule, I primarily train in the afternoon. Here in North Carolina, the afternoons are now in the 90s and mornings around 60s. In previous years, I've been able to hit my power targets after a couple of weeks of acclimating. So my question is regarding to the really hot dog days of summer when the temps climb above 100. Do you suggest for training in the heat for those of us zooming on conference calls in the nice cool mornings? Other than waking up at 4 a.m. and jumping on the trainer, what would you recommend for training on really hot days?
Okay, so we get this question a lot, Brian, and thank you. So first things first is Saturday and Sunday, presumably when you're not working, you can get up in the morning and beat the heat. So you don't have any Zoom calls or conference. So get out of bed, make your coffee, do your internet, and get out there and do your training. The second thing is that you just can't beat the heat when you have 60 degrees in the morning compared to, say, like 100 in the afternoon. There's just no comparison. Physiologically, it's a much lesser amount of stress to contend with. 100 degrees versus 60 degrees. So what I would encourage you to do, because you're already doing 2 days, Saturday, Sunday, in the cool temps, then you got Monday, Friday off. So now you got 3 training days really to contend with. Probably 1, maybe 2 of those is hard. 1 of those is easy. So that easy ride, that's like one maybe where you could battle the heat. And then now you have 2 days left of the week. Maybe you take that 1 hard ride, get up in the morning, make your early bird watts, and get it done. Generally, the work week is shorter, structured workouts, so you're not going to be, you know, like 60 to 90 minutes ought to do it. And for the record, I have several athletes, and I know of many athletes that get up at 4 a.m. To do their workouts, whether it's on the trainer or to just beat the heat outside. And so don't let the time of the day be a deterrent. And also know these athletes are going to bed at 7:30, which is kind of freaky early, but it's like the legendary basketball coach Bobby Knight says, where there's a will, there's a way. And a lot of these athletes are not letting anything get in the way of their goals. And so they're up early in the morning. Now, I'm not saying do that every single day. What I would really encourage you to do is experiment and try one workout early in the morning, and then try the next workout in the heat of the day, which you probably already have experience with, and see if you don't notice a difference. Me personally, when I work out in cool temps, the recovery takes a lot less. But when you do the same like VO2 max workout in 100 degrees, you're demolished and you're like worthless the rest of the day, and then maybe a couple of days later. So experiment, see if you can find like your sweet spot, and also talk with Coach Isaiah. You know, he's been in the same situation, and that's what we do as coaches. We problem solve creatively. Creatively.
Creatively.
Creatively. With experimentation. So try one thing. If it works, keep doing it. If it doesn't work, try the next best idea, and so forth.
But one thing personally for me is like I try not to push the zone 2, because like I try to focus on the meat of the workout. So VO2, like before the 20 minutes before, I won't be doing upper zone 2. Try to keep the heart rate down so when I hit the workout, I'm a little more fresh. But yeah, Frank had most of the good points there. On to question 4. Tim Cahill posted on the forum. He is a longtime FasCat that just signed up for one-on-one coaching. Awesome. Woohoo! I do almost all of my training solo, as I do not have a group rides locally that I fit into. There are a couple of group rides in the next county over that are great for a conversational ride, but do not hammer down. The few people I know that make good training partners all have very different schedules. Mm-hmm. I am not uncomfortable with pack dynamics, but I do get spent very little time practicing in a pack. This brings me to my question. While I don't have a good training partner, I do have an 18-year-old and a scooter. Would you see a benefit in getting him into some motor pacing with me? If so, what kind of workouts? Would there be any benefit in motor pacing for the mere mortal? Is this getting too specific? I'm 39 years old, and most of my racing this season will be between 100 to 150 mile gravel races.
Well, Tim, you are gosh darn right. Motor pacing is the single workout I would give to my athletes if there was such a thing as a utopian training world. Pedal stroke for pedal stroke, there's no better workout in my opinion. I can say that because I've got 30,000 miles of motor pacing coaching experience, and I also like to motor pace as an athlete myself. Check out or go watch our YouTube video on motor pacing. I taught Jackson how to motor pace me. We film it and we give you like a rundown of everything you need to think about. But the biggest 2 things I would impress upon you for your 18-year-old is number 1, safety, and number 2, don't worry about workouts. Just concentrate on like average speed. And then let me give you an example. So first things first, have your teenager go out there and just practice driving the scooter over the terrain, and then the second time go behind him, and then don't even do it as a workout. I just call it a practice workout, just to get a feel for you behind the scooter, and him a feel for the throttle with you on it. Number 1 rule of motor pacing is just like Fight Club. Don't get dropped. Do not let go of the wheel. And then the other number 1 rule for the driver is, you know, don't cause a crash. And really, he needs to never hit the brakes. And the way that you do, you might be like, what? But it's not like that. As soon as you stop pedaling for a split second, you're going to come way off the motor. And then, but if he were to hit the brakes, you're going to plow into him. So that just, that's the biggest thing. And the other thing is he can speed up really quickly and get away from you fast. And so the rule of thumb I always have, in the event of an emergency, you go to the right, he goes to the left. That's just the best thing about it. So the other thing to think about is have the left side mirror, have him keep it with the eye on the traffic coming up from behind. And then the right side mirror should go on you, your face, how much you're suffering, and then also your knees, if you're pedaling or not. You should never not really be pedaling for an extended period of time, more than like 3 to 5 seconds. That's the benefit of motor pacing. That's why it's a leg speed workout. Your driver is adjusting the throttle so that the speed goes up and down and you're always pedaling. And let me give you an example. But one other pro tip is to take your bike computer and put it on the handlebar of the scooter. And you're wearing a heart rate monitor. Don't even worry about power. It's going to be bouncing all over the place, and it's fun to look out afterwards. But during, honestly, it's gobbledygook. So, and tell your son, for maybe like the first time out, you want to average, let's just say 23 miles per hour, and that's presuming it's a more flat route. So say, hey, we're going to do 23 miles per hour, and then you kind of pay attention to your heart rate. And then the second time you go and do that for like an hour. That's the workout. Don't even worry about intervals. I used to have athletes World Tour come to me with like these complicated workouts, and they would tell it to me, and I'd be like, you ready to go? And then I'd just start driving, and they'd be like, wait, and I'd be, nope, that's not how it works. We're just doing these workouts. Don't try to do a workout behind the scooter. I mean, you could do like sprint arounds you may have heard about, and attacks and things like that, but really for, I think where you're at, just concentrate on average speed and average heart rate. And so say you average 160 beats per minute for 23 miles per hour, and 160 beats per minute is like, let's say that's 90% of your threshold heart rate. So you can tell your son for the next workout, all right, let's average 24.5 miles per hour. And then you do a whole hour and you're pegged right at threshold heart rate, 170 beats per minute. That's great. Now you got some good benchmarks. And then, by the way, motor pacing like once a week is about right. And you're going to use it as your hardest workout of the week. It can be harder than, it's going to be way faster than any of your gravel races, by the way. And then like in week 3 or 4, you can be like, hey son, let's go out and try to average 25 miles per hour, 25.5, 26 miles an hour as you improve, as you progress. And what you're going to find is your leg speed increases. It's a hella good threshold workout. It's very stochastic. It mimics riding in the group. You're going to have to adjust. It's like really fast pedaling, coast for 0.5 seconds. Really fast pedaling, 700 watts for 2 seconds, 0 watts, 800 watts for 10 seconds, things like that. Use the terrain and have your son, you're going to have to coach him through how to twist that throttle. And when you begin going up a hill, he's going to need to ease back on the throttle. Keep an eye on your heart rate to make sure he's not killing you and not dropping you. And then when he comes over the crest of the climb, he needs to stay on the gas, but not too much to keep you on the wheel, and then gradually twist that throttle so y'all increase your speed over the backside of the climb, so you're always pedaling, and keep that average speed high. And that's what makes motor pacing great. So I could go on and on about motor pacing because I sat on the scooter, and you can't multitask when you're motor pacing. You just got to sit there and think about it. So I've thought about it a lot, and I've spent a lot of time motor pacing a lot of athletes, including master cyclists, world tour athletes. It's incredible. And you mentioned pack dynamics, and you have access to that. It's not a substitute for riding in the pack. So if you don't have the opportunity to get in as many races as you can, but also use the motor pacing to your advantage.
Awesome. I just got excited. I have 3 kids. I can't wait till they get older. I can start to do this. They can earn their keep.
I have a lot of athletes. Okay. Oh, you just reminded me of something. Athletes that have a spouse that has an e-bike, guess what you can do? Yep. now you can train with your spouse, and they can, on the e-bike, you can kind of, get pretty good at motor pacing. It kind of depends on the size of the e-bike or the battery, or I don't really know how e-bikes work in that regard, horsepower. But that's one thing. But yeah, a lot of spouses, it's also a great way to ruin a marriage in case your driver's not good at it, because it's an art and a skill. And when I would take the FasCat coaches out and teach them how to motor pace, I was always behind the scooter, and there would be times where I'd be getting dropped, and yes, I would get mad because it's really hard, and it takes a good throttle, good driver to make the motor pacing great. So spend some time on it, and yeah, it's great.
Good luck to you.
Yeah, good luck. It's your son, so yeah.
All right, question number 5 from Amy Engelhard. She posted on the forum. She's on one of our cyclocross plans. I think there is enough science to support time and specific types of training within a women's menstrual cycle would lead to the best adaptations. How could women modify or line up an existing FasCat training plan to best coincide with their cycle? Frank, you can handle this one.
All right, Amy, thanks for asking. Fortunately, we had Lacey pre-answer this question for you, Amy. And Lacey says, it really depends on whether you have a normal cycle. For those that do, putting your rest week the week before your cycle starts is ideal. That is when the fatigue and the sleep disturbances are typically the highest. And then once your period starts, hormones will fall and your aerobic capacity, carb utilization, and rest rate of perceived exertion return to normal. And I would also say, from reading Dr. Stacy Sims' book Roar and learning about this, I've also heard her speak at the Training Peaks Endurance Summit. I think this would also be a good example of working with a coach to really dial in the timing of your training plan to your cycle, and then getting feedback from you of what worked and what didn't, and how to modify that downstream. Because, and also like a coach that has experience with that. Like, I mean, not everyone can hire Dr. Stacy Sims, but I think that's a pretty, I mean, this is just because Dr. Stacy Sims's work, her book came out, it's not like coaches haven't been, kind of paying attention to this over the years. So, if you are thinking about hiring a coach, because there are limitations to like what a training plan can provide, and unfortunately, it's just going to be up to you to edit your plan and your rest weeks per what Lacey mentioned, in the week before. But if you want some help, great example of what one-on-one coaching would bring to the table for you.
Okay, question 6 from Roland Greenwood from New York City, posted in the forum. I am pretty new to cycling, and my goal for next year is to ride Unbound XL.
Woo, 350.
Wow. About 10 years ago, I rode a 200-mile ride across Massachusetts in 2 days. Between then and the start of this year, I did 30 rides, so I consider myself a new rider. This year, I decided to get back into shape after we had a baby, and so far I have lost 55 pounds. I have been maybe 50 miles under my belt this year, and I'm not done any formal training. I'm looking to really get serious about my training. I read the training Bible, so I have a basic understanding about training, but I don't know where to get started. I live in New York City, so Zwift during the week is ideal, and I can do longer rides on the weekends. Do you have any advice on where to start? Are there any other races that I should do in between now and then?
All right, Roland, awesome. So from 0 to 350, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, you see this when you have these big events that get a lot of media coverage. They're so inspiring, and everyone's like, yes, I want to do an Ironman, or yes, I want to do the 350. What I would suggest, Roland, is set up a 3 or 4 or 5 year game plan, with the 4th or 5th year being Unbound 350, and work backwards from there. So next year, or even this summer, step number 1 is to do a race, any length, any, there's a lot of gravel races in New York City. There's a lot in Vermont. Ted King has his Vermont race in early August. I think it might be sold out though. So look on the calendar. There's the Vermont Overlander. There's all sorts of there's a lot of good gravel racing up in Vermont. Ian Boswell told us that he had his Peachwood Fondo in late September, I believe.
Bat and kill.
The point is, find something and start small, do that successfully. And so say that was a 50-mile race. So then next summer, graduate up to a 100-mile race. Actually train. You want to train 5 days a week, year round. And so the consistency, we talked about this with Ian on Monday. He doesn't do world tour hours like he used to, but he does train consistently, and that's what's going to help you the most, because you live in New York City. You know, you had just had a baby, you have a family, you have a job. You're not going to be able to, you know, do 20 hours a week. But if you do 5 training days for the next 3 or 4 years, I think you're going to be ready to do something like the Unbound. And so with regards to that, so next summer you're doing a 100-mile race. These year after that, then do the regular Unbound, the regular 200 miles, and then you might want to see how that goes for you to evaluate. You can always set new goals. A lot of athletes say 200, one and done, and then they might go back to the shorter gravel races. You may be like, you know, so happy, you'd be like, okay, now I'm doing the 350. I'm just putting it out there because you can change your mind. So, but anyway, so 100-mile next year, 200 the year after that. Now we're in 3 years, and then years 4 and 5 would be maybe to go for the 350. So it's a long-term process. Where you're at now, get out there and have fun, get on a plan. But I don't think you might not necessarily want to say 350 for next year. No. Maybe like come at it more gradually. But also, with that said, the other way to kind of think about it, there's 2 ways. Take what you've done up until now. You said you did like 50 miles or something like that. Start riding more than that, and then ride more than that, and then ride more than that, and more than that, and more than that. And that's really how you get faster. If you want help with that, then the secret of every successful cyclist, they're on a plan. It can be in their head, on a napkin, on a piece of paper, or it can be like in the training software of how we sell our training plans. And you know, your success could come from getting on a plan. And plans come in all different sizes and shapes. One thing I would suggest, get on our 18 weeks of Sweet Spot plan. It's a great place for you to start. And if you want more help, if you want more customization, if you don't want to wait 5 years figuring it out for yourself, hire a coach. You're going to decrease the time it takes to get to your goals from the expertise and input of having a coach share their knowledge and their experience with you, because they've been there, done that. And that they might be able to cut down your time to 350 by a year or 2. And it's just invaluable. But do long rides on the weekends. You should work your way up to a 4 or 5 or 6 hour ride before Labor Day this summer. Yeah. You know, I coached an athlete that lived in New York City, and Kevin, shout out to Kevin. And one of the biggest improvements that he made was to get off of Zwift and doing just 1 hour rides. And I would send him out to Long Island, all the way out, all the way back, 4, 5, 6 hours. And that helped him improve immensely. And I would encourage you to do that too. And then also look for opportunities to, you know, take trips on the weekends. But the bottom line is do those long rides on the weekends and set the long-term goal. So hope that helps, and we'll see you out there.
Hey, good luck. Question 7 from Landis. He posted on the forum. Do you interpret and apply race matchbook data from WKO Plus to races for your athletes, or just training, or not at all? I'm not looking for anything too terribly specific, more just a general idea of coaching athletes and how to think about matchbooks. For example, I am doing Tulsa Tough next week, which is actually now coming up tonight.
Tonight. Oh,
yeah,
today's Friday.
Yeah. In WKO Plus, I see the time above FTP, FRC, and PMAX FRC respectively. However, unless I'm in a break, I'm 100% sure I won't be looking at anything except for the wheels in front of me. Position is king and paramount and saving energy for the last few laps, or that bridge break opportunity and the inevitable sprint finish. I'm intrigued with the Crybaby Hill, however it looks like 20 to 30 seconds for the Masters A for the climb, and for me to stay with the group. I'm thinking 200% plus FTP. I don't know how many laps we will end up doing, but 45 minutes, so maybe 20 times up. Looking at some harder rides I've done lately, I've been doing roughly 5 to 6 minutes above FRC. in my opinion, all this data is more just validating of trending in general. If time above FTP, FRC, etc. is trending up, then good. Trending down is not necessarily bad unless getting ready for Tulsa type event. Again, general takeaways on how to use this data are much appreciated.
All right, Landis, I am reminded by the legendary quote of Mike Tyson, who says, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And as it relates to you, no matter what your data says, no matter how many matches you've figured out, until you get punched in the face during that race, it doesn't matter, because you got to be in the moment of what is happening in the race. And you don't have, racing is not about saying, I got 12 matches, how am I going to use that? You're reacting to the situation in the peloton as it happens. A lot of times, you're not going to be able to say, I'm out of matches, and then be able to make a decision. In a crit, you either hang on to the peloton or you do not. It's sink or swim every single moment. And there's also, the other confounding part about the matches is there's big matches and then there's small matches. You might have 2 or 3 ginormous matches, and then you might have 20 small matches. And so I've really never found the software that helpful, other than what I call shits and giggles, to look at it. But I've never ever taken like the matches and stuff and said, okay, you've got, Jake, 14 matches, use them wisely, good luck. It's not like that. Crybaby Hill, what I would think about it, you were kind of alluding to this. Think about how many laps you're going to do. That's going to be how many times you're going to go anaerobic up Crybaby Hill, and then you want to be able to do that in training and then in racing. And so that's why crits are good training for crits, because a lot of times crits, say you do like let's say 20 laps of an 8-corner 9-degree course. So that's 8 jumps out of a corner times 20, that is 240, is that? No, 160, good grief. 160, and then say you got to go, 10 seconds. So that's 160 10-second anaerobic jumps. Now, if you were to design an interval workout like that, you would go insane. You'd lose count. That would be cruel and unusual punishment. So what we do is you do a crit for training. I mean, you do some training to get you ready for that, but then the next level is to do the racing. So do the racing, be in the moment. You can come back and check how many matches you had. But it's totally objective. It's like you can assign your matches really low and you'll see that you had like 200, or you can set it really high, like over 150%. How many times did you go over 150% of your FTP in this crit, and then the next time you had to do so, you couldn't? It's kind of like hindsight is 20/20. I really don't use matches for the future. In these cases, you could say, all right, here's what happened from your data last year, same race, because the race is really going to dictate what your matches were. So like if you're doing the Crybaby Hill this year and next year, for sure use your data and stuff. But it's the same way in cyclocross, it's going to be course dependent. Even like during the tour, the riders, the course is different every year. And I don't think anyone's thinking about what the software says. They're maybe thinking about it in terms of their head or something like that. Yeah. A
race like Crybaby Hill with the hill, like you just have to get up the hill every time. You can't think about it. You have to use the match. Like in a normal crit, you might want to watch how many times you follow attacks, or you don't want to just follow one guy going off the front. Maybe wait till there's like 3 or 4. But yeah, you just don't think of it in terms of matches. Thinking about how can I win this race.
Yeah. Even so, you've done Crybaby Hill, right?
No, but I've done the one in Minnesota, which had a hill. Same thing.
Schlitz Park. That was in Wisconsin. Have you done Crybaby Hill, Allie?
No, sir.
All right. Well, Coach Isaiah is there right now. He's done Crybaby Hill. We were just talking about this yesterday. But yeah, I think in terms of like doing crits and attacks and stuff, the best crit is when you make one attack and you make it work. And the more attacks you have to do to make it work, the less probability that it's gonna work, because you take a little bit of oomph off of that attack. Same way with responding to attacks and counterattacks and moves and splits and, you know, acceleration. So it's a good question. It's just, I don't think this, like, it's down to a hard science. It's just, yeah.
You kind of, like you said in your answer, you're going to do 20 laps of Crybaby Hill or whatever. You're going to try to work your way up to 20 efforts in training. Like, you start with 10, then 15, and then 18. But yeah, good luck to you tonight and this weekend.
I think you're far better learning how many matches you have by racing than you are by searching for it in the software.
Okay, question 8 from Daniel Kessler on the forum. I have a goofy question, but maybe it will make the podcast and be worth a laugh and a jersey. Maybe.
Maybe.
I'm taking my partner to Durango next week as a part of my secret plan to convince her to move to Colorado.
Smart.
We are both cyclists that live now in Oakland. The ride here is decent, but the CTL for housing prices is at all-time high. If you're a cyclist and moving to Colorado, where would you locate? We both work remotely. Also, before you get freaked that we are invading, I have some street cred. A Wyoming graduate and lived in Fort Collins for 5 years.
Okay, great question. Allie, if you could look at the Instagram thing. So the answer is, so the prices have gone up here too, and real estate prices are at an all-time high, you know, probably where you are, but also out here too. It's just kind of the thing, especially so along the Front Range and the I-25 corridor along, you know, from Colorado Springs all the way up to Fort Collins. So it's really expensive, and just because there's a lot of people that want to move here, there's a limited amount of housing for a high demand, so the supply and demand thing. If you move east of I-25, it's less expensive, but the riding is less good. It's more flat, not as many cyclists are out there. If you move west in the mountains, you can get a more affordable housing price, but you have to contend with the winter. For a lot of athletes, that's no big deal because they're big skiers or snowboarders, so you get the best of both worlds. And with that, you know, you get the really high prices in the mountain towns. And but yeah, you know, you said you work remotely, so there are places in Colorado where you can enjoy everything that you want and find an affordable price. Places like Salida, Buena Vista, are getting really popular. They're big time recreational cities. You know, if I could move anywhere in Colorado, it'd probably be Crested Butte. That's my favorite place. The mountain biking is like incredible, but with the good comes the, you know, the not so good. And the road riding is, there's like 2 roads. There's actually 1 road into Crested Butte, and then there's 2 gravel roads out. So you contend with that. My question to you would be like, are you a mountain biker or a road rider? And you mentioned Durango. That's a, you know, mountain bike capital of the world. So I think maybe you're a mountain biker, and I think you're on the right track with Durango. But, you know, be aware the road cycling in Durango isn't all that. And a lot of pros in the late 90s and early 2000s that were from Durango would move to the Front Range for the training and for the community. Now Durango's got a great cycling community, good group rides, incredible single track. The road riding is okay. It's not as good as it is in Boulder, but again, it's like it's a pro con and it's a push shove. The prices are cheaper in Durango. Durango's further away from everything. You know, you're generally, if you fly, there's very few direct flights from Durango to wherever maybe you need to go. You're going to need to connect at Albuquerque or Salt Lake or Denver, for example. Whereas on the Front Range, you can, you know, direct flights just about any major metropolitan area in the city. I feel like I could be a real estate agent at this point, answering your question. Point is, get on Zillow, watch the Saturday Night Live skit, figure out what you can afford, and begin to, you know, make your dream come true of moving to Colorado. If you want to do the van life, there's great van life places as well. Yeah. Yeah, go where the riding is the best, where you want it to be.
Yeah, I'm from Indiana, just coming out here every time, it's like, oh, like, I wish I could live here as well. It's pretty awesome. All right, question 9 from David Kim, posted on the forum. I have a question. I am training for the Leadville Trail 100 and living at sea level in Venice Beach, California. I'm a bit concerned about the high altitude. I've been able to do some high altitude rides at Mammoth Mountain this year and could definitely feel the extra effort. I heard that heat adaptation could help prepare for the high altitude racing. Any truth to that?
Well, I have not heard that, but I would want to see where you saw that to put it into context. Dealing with the altitude coming from sea level is just a limitation you're going to have to face. There's no way to sugarcoat it. But I wouldn't let that deter you, because many athletes are in the same boat, and they're going to be, contending with the altitude. It's just a fact of life with Leadville. But that's why a lot of the Rocky Mountain athletes do well there, because they are somewhat altitude acclimated. There's even a few athletes that are fully altitude acclimated that live in Leadville or live in Breckenridge at 10,000 feet or something like that. And, Dave Weens, lives in Gunnison. I think he's at like 7,000, 8,000 feet. A lot of the athletes, come from the Rocky Mountain area. You don't see many winners coming from sea level. That's not to say you can't, but also don't let that deter you. It's kind of like an experience. But as far as I know, and you may have seen something about sauna and heat adaptation. I definitely think that'll help you train for the heat and adapt to heat. But I've never seen the connection between heat and altitude acclimation.
Just remember that, watch your pace and your effort. And if you train with power, I wrote an article actually about training and racing at altitude, so you can take a look at that. I'm sure that's on the website.
As well as our Leadville training tip.
Yeah. So question 10 from Chad McNeese. He posted on the forum. What type of annual training plan and approach would you be appropriate for someone with no particular focus on a single discipline? I'm a jack of all trades, masters of none, type of rider that does everything from short 1-hour mountain bike races to 6-hour gravel races and a bit of road racing. I realize with the wide range of efforts and related fitness like those above that there is no real chance of optimizing results in any of those. I'm just hoping to have enough fitness in the range to have fun and maybe be competitive. Is there an approach for non-specialized riders that touches on a range of fitness for the average weekend warrior?
All right, Chad, great question. I think a lot of endurance training is the same, whether you're a specialist or an all-arounder, jack of all trades, whether you're a mountain biker, graveler, roadie. It's not until you get close to your season or your events that you begin to specialize with regards to like interval training. So like we talk about switching from base to race. It's at that point when you do make the switch from base to race, then you begin that specialty phase. You choose intervals specific to your event. Like mountain bikers would do a lot of anaerobic work or maybe threshold work if you're doing climbing mountain bike race courses, versus a graveler who maybe want to focus more on that endurance work, a lot of sweet spot, the gravel simulation rides. So for the most part, a lot of in the off season and preseason, roadies and mountain bikers train the same fundamentally. That's because the fundamentals are same for endurance training. You lift weights at the beginning of the off season, you build up your base in the second half of the off season. And that's what's captured in our 32-week off-season plan. And that approach covers everything you mentioned, road, gravel, mountain bike. It's when, as I mentioned, switch from base to race that you begin to specialize with your intervals. And so, and then even when you do intervals, there are many types of intervals that helps all types of cyclists. And so VO2s are not specific to any one discipline. VO2s have been shown to increase one's FTP. That's in the literature. So we include VO2s with nearly all of our interval training plans for nearly all types of cycling. So, and then, anaerobic work, obviously it's more specific to the criterium cyclocross racer, and the threshold work is more specific to a time trialist, any event that has climbing. And so it's really in those 6 weeks that you can begin to specialize, and that would also be where you begin to tailor your training. But fundamentally, in the off season, it's going to be the same. That's what's captured in our 32-week off season training plan.
All right, question 11 from Geraldine E. Vanderhagen. She's an athlete coached by Allie. Coach Allie says hi. She posted on the forum. I train with heart rate, and when doing intervals outside that last more than 1 to 2, I nearly always pick a route that has hills and can use to help me hit the zones. I'm wondering if there is disadvantages to doing this. While riding the trainer this winter, I saw how cadence and power interact. It seems to me that generating the work to hit a given heart rate on a hill comes with slower cadence, with less opportunity to generate the same power or heart rate by increasing cadence. I try to hit some of those intervals on a flat course, but find it nearly impossible to hold unless there is a good headwind. Can you explain how the work generated from a given heart rate or power differs on the hills and the flat with regards to fitness, strength, and racing? Should I work on learning how to hit those intervals without using hills? Does pedaling time on other types of terrain and cadence balance the interval work? Coach Allie's working this all out for me, so I don't have to worry about it, but I want to understand the concepts. You have a good coach.
Okay, great question, Geraldine. I want to impress upon you 2 words: rolling inertia. Okay, so I'm gonna get to that in a minute, but I think we all use hills for intervals because it's easier to make the power, the heart rates, the RPE. That's, you know, just what cyclists do. I think also many cyclists, we all have trouble holding our prescribed intensity on the flats. That's just part of the science. That's where the rolling inertia comes in. And so when you are doing an interval on the flat, what happens is once you get up to speed, there's less to push against. This is what we call rolling inertia. You got all that momentum, and it's just gonna, if you stop pedaling, you keep going forward. So as a result, you have less to push against, and so it's harder to hold your watts. And we have a climb here, Flagstaff, and it's steep, and then it flattens out. Steep, flattens out, and you know what happens when it flattens out? Everyone freaks out because their power goes down because you can't. You have so much rolling inertia. So holding a steady effort up this hill is next to impossible. It's very dynamic. Same thing goes when you're on the flat, and it's easy to hold your power at the beginning when you get up to speed, and then when you're up to speed, there's less to push against. But there's a couple of tricks I'll share with you. So when you are doing intervals on the flat, because you do want to do intervals on the flat, because presumably you're going to race on the flat. Like, I think you're a cyclocrosser. There's a lot of power sections on flat courses, and you want to be able to accelerate on the flat. So do intervals on the hills, but also don't pigeonhole yourself into that, and work on intervals on the flat. And so when you begin your interval, you know, roll up into the prescribed wattage, heart rate, RPE, and then when you see that your intensity is dropping, shift down, pedal harder, maybe speed up as a result, and see if that doesn't keep you in your prescribed intensity. If that doesn't work, and all of a sudden you shift it down a bunch of times, and the next thing you know, your cadence is super low, when you're back out a couple of gears and then now increase your cadence. Now you're spinning harder, faster, and you're going to keep your watts up, keep your heart rate up. And this is, if you ever do a time trial, this is like time trial training to a T. Keep that, really pay attention to that leg speed. A lot of times when you have a lot of rolling inertia, you're getting tired, your leg speed drops, your power drops accordingly. So if you notice that, just say, okay, pick it up, Geraldine, and pedal faster. Pedal harder, pedal faster. I don't know if that's exactly answering your question, but that's what I would say in the moment to a cyclist. And yeah, you know, just the good news is the more you work on doing intervals on the flats, the better you'll become and be better prepared for those races. And keep talking with Allie over here, and she'll keep your progression going. You're
in good hands.
Yes.
All right, question 12 from Ahmad Zureri, longtime FasCat, posted in the forum.
Coached by Isaiah.
Nice. Another good coach. They're all good coaches here. As most know, learning how to suffer is an integral part of cycling. What have you learned over the years about finding the joy in suffering and pushing yourself into a space that you did not think you previously could? Any habits that could help? Suggested readings? I have used music and pre-race ride rituals and some success, as well as taking moments to breathe, calm down, and talk to myself mid-race. But any other advice or places to look for wisdom would be great. Thank you. Also, you really motivated me to ask with these watermelon blocks as a potential reward. So delicious and necessary for that mid-Atlantic humidity. And it's a whole box of them, not just the sleeve.
Yeah, whole box. Yeah, so great question, Ahmed. To be honest, when I was thinking about your question and the answer, and I remember I taught myself how to suffer by training with power and using my power meter to hit and hold that prescribed wattage. And I would will myself to hold the intensity until the interval was over. And that's all I would concentrate on. And because I was committed to FTFPing, there was nothing that was going to come in between me and that wattage during that interval. And I break it down to every single pedal stroke. And I think that could be one thing that would help. I would play a little game with myself to not go too hard at the beginning of the interval, and then to hold it in the middle of the interval. And then as you get tired, to, no matter what, hold my wattage above the low end of the interval to achieve success for that interval. And the power meter was amazing for that. It literally tells you in real time if you're pedaling too hard or too easy, and I would just resolve myself, get psyched up, be motivated for that workout to nail it. And along those lines, I think so a power meter could help. What goes on in between your ears is probably the biggest thing. You mentioned music, being motivated, that all helps. You know, I've countless examples of athletes saying, you know, they listen to a certain style of music during their intervals, like Metallica or, you know, Rage Against the Machine or, you know, Ozzy Osbourne. I don't know. Like, what do you listen to during your intervals?
Billy Joel.
I don't think that's true.
It's 100% true.
Billy, what do you listen to during your intervals, Allie?
AC/DC.
Okay, there you go. So hard rock and metal seems to be the going rate for intervals. But I digress. Point is you know, choose something that helps you get motivated. I always tell athletes, look at your training for when you go to bed before the night before, so you know what's coming at you. Do not just turn on your Garmin and see the VO2 max workout pop up and say, oh shit. You know, you need to be preparing for that interval well in advance. And there are days when you don't need to be super duper psyched, and there are days when you need to be really pumped up. Good cup of coffee, just a healthy dose of motivation. Watch a video or something like that. So that's like being motivated. There's a lot of sports psychology you can use and apply for your interval training and racing. You know, this is how FasCat got its name. You know, the animal imagery of, you know, visualizing myself as a cheetah running 60 miles an hour. Doesn't have to be a cheetah, although that one is the fastest in the world. So I would recommend maybe that one if you want to be the fastest. You know, don't be, sadly, maybe a dog. They're not that fast. But yeah, lots of animals you can choose from, whatever resonates with you. You can even, you know, think of, like, we've joked, like, what would Alaphilippe do? You know, Egan Bernal, maybe your favorite Tour de France hero. And you mentioned breathing, being able to breathe. I think that if you can focus on breathing during an interval and take, you know, be in the moment, that's going to help you out, right? You're definitely doing it right if you're doing that. Coach Nadia, a number of years ago, she would say, flap your arms like a chicken. So if you have a death grip on your handlebar during the interval and you're clenching harder and harder and harder, just recognize that, loosen up, flap your arms like a chicken. If you really want to do it, take a deep breath and say, "Wah!" or something like that.
I'm not joining you in that.
Okay. Flap your arms like a chicken, Jake. The point is, you know, you're just breathing, but really, I think yoga and meditation can help out a lot with your breathing and being able to be in the moment. And, you know, that it just comes with practice. So go back and listen to the podcast that Jackson and I recorded on meditation, and maybe try some of that. Yoga definitely helps because it's all about your breathing, and that's what will begin to teach you what it means to breathe, breath to movement. But also, because you're coached by Isaiah, talk with him about it, because he's really good at this too. He has talked at length. We did recent training tip on the warm-up, and he was his coach advice was like using the warm-up to get in the zone, and he had a whole routine, including a breath routine that he used at the end. So definitely talk with him about that, and it just takes practice. You want to practice how you play. It's not a switch you can turn on your race.
Yeah, and like with those intervals, practice like it's coming to the end of the race, or like the group is chasing you, or you guys have talked about Strava intervals before, trying to set PRs during your intervals, just little extra motivations. Question 13 from Timothy Lazinski. He posted on the forum. I know that you all do not recommend doing heavy strength training past the strength phase and into the season. My question is, are there any circumstances where you think having a strength maintenance session one time a week during the base season may be benefit an athlete? From your experience, have you had any athletes that could handle some strength training further into a season and benefit from it?
No, to be honest. It not only is your limited time better spent on the bike, but the fatigue from lifting will impede your recovery and will diminish your power output. Even the World Tour cyclists that I've coached before, I do not have them lift during the season. They have 24/7, 365 to dedicate to training. They do not lift in the season. And I'm talking about squats and leg press. What they do to maintain their strength is zone 4, 5, and 6 intervals. So what you do on the bike will maintain that strength that you carry out of the gym from the off season. So, and then when the season is over, you go back in the gym, and then you cycle back with an off-season weight program, and then that maintains the strength you made from the previous season and also hopes to improve it for the upcoming season. So to be specific, I said squats, leg press. No, I do not recommend squats, leg press during the season, whether you're World Tour or anything else. A lot of athletes get confused when they see on Instagram and YouTube and social media other athletes doing strength training during the season. You have to, ask, what is their situation? Are they doing real strength training? Is it more like mobility training? There is an advantage to doing mobility training during the season. A lot of kettlebell and Viper tube work. Go look at our Viper video from our at-home strength program. But you do that still in the off season, because I can attest this past year, I did a lot of kettlebell and Viper work, and I was wrecked after those, but I was building strength. I wasn't trying to maintain it. The point is, do your intervals. That will maintain your strength. But there is no such thing as on the bike, strength training to improve your power output during the season. It's a push-pull. If you're trying to build strength in the gym and build power on the bike during the season, they're going to pull at each other, and you're just not going to get anywhere, and you're going to be really tired and grumpy during it. So X-Nay, the weights A, 100% bike, do your intervals, maintain that strength. But there's a lot of other stuff you need to maintain during the season. Go back into the weight room in the off season. The easiest solution, like I was just saying, don't lift weights during the season. Do your yoga, do your Revo, do your foundations, maybe do some mobility work with that Viper or a kettlebell, but don't do any squats or leg presses. Now, with that said, if you're a kilo rider, pursuiter, track sprinter, you want to lift weights year round, but that's a completely different style of training. I don't think you are, so I won't even go there. But Ashton Lambie, world-class pursuiter. He's been putting a lot up there on social media about him doing deadlifts all year round, but he's training for a 4-minute event, and he needs to maintain and improve his strength for a 4-minute event. Endurance is less important for that, and that's why he's lifting year round. And I don't think you saw his name in the top 10 of Unbound.
Not this year. No, I don't think so.
I don't think he cares, because he's training for 4 minutes. Yeah. So it's really important to just FTFP and not get caught up with what people are doing on social media or what you read on the internet.
Okay. Question 14.
Or here on podcasts. Just kidding.
Question 14 from John Livingood. He's from Knoxville. He posted on the forum.
Former FasCat
nice
athlete.
Can you just determine you are recovered by TSB instead of doing a 7-day recovery week. Can your recovery intervals be 5 days if your TSB goes positive? Just wondering in case a C race happens to fall on the weekend of a recovery week.
Yeah, good question. I mean, you can do a C race at the end of a recovery week. There's no harm in that. It's not like you have to be like super duper strict, like I'm recovered now, therefore I can train again. You train during your recovery weeks. You're just training in less volume, and your body is super compensating during that time. And at the end of that period, the assumption is, okay, I am fully recovered. I'm able to start the next mesocycle. But technically, yes, you could wait till your TSB, goes positive by not training at all. But the better way to do that is really, follow the plan, go through the recovery week, be patient. The biggest thing I really don't look at TSB, because from the plan, I know if the athlete is following it, that positive TSB is built in. What I really want to know, hear, or see the athlete say is that at the end of the rest week, all of a sudden they're saying, I feel great, and then I want to corroborate that with their power data and see bigger numbers, bigger metrics. I want to see them that they're belting out the kilojoules in these simulation rides, maybe setting some peak 5 and 20 minutes, maybe even 1 hour. Just generally have them say, felt great. And then we're like, okay, that's good. I wouldn't want to say you just take 5 days off and let your CTL free fall in order to get your TSB back up. I wouldn't think of it like that. I've never had an athlete do that, but rather example, my classic rest week is Monday, Tuesday off, Wednesday short with intervals, short endurance on Thursday, Friday off, and then Saturday, you're going to be recovered, but not like, you're still in a rest week. Let me explain. You could do a C race, but you could also do a hitter gravel simulation ride. You can even do a field test if your training plan calls. It's a great time to do it. You've just gotten through essentially a rest midweek. And then in the spirit of the rest week, the psychological part of it is I'll have athletes do either a coffee shop or recovery ride, or not even ride at all on Sunday. 2 more rest days when you factor in Monday, and then to compensate that, because they're fresher, guaranteed they're going to do a pretty hard interval workout, a group ride, or even a training race that following Tuesday. So that's kind of like what a rest week looks like from a coach's training plan perspective. What your TSB does during that, I would say, is secondary. What's even more important than that is to how you feel on the bike and the watts that you've are starting to make after that.
Excellent.
Yeah. Oh, hey, and then we're done.
Yeah, this question, that was 14.
All right. So, I don't know, Jake, what do you think is the most thoughtful question? Put you on the spot.
Thoughtful question. Probably the one, learning how to suffer. I think that's kind of important, and we all face that, especially when we start doing these endurance rides, the 200-mile unbound and all that. Like, how would you get through that mentally prepared? Because you're going to go through many moments when you're questioning everything you're doing. So yeah. I guess let's go with that.
Okay. I'm in agreement there. What do you think, Allie?
Sounds good. And I also like the weightlifting question because I get that a lot and read that a lot. So, Frank, you can choose.
Yeah,
but do you subscribe to the only weightlift in the off season?
Yes.
Yeah. And Allie was a professional with a PRO capital. Raced over in Europe, won a lot of bike races.
Yeah, shoot, because she drank coffee, from what I hear.
She drank coffee, and because she didn't lift during the season. But that was a great question. So we'll give you that the runner-up winner, and maybe we can find another vintage jersey for you. But Ahmed, you are the winner, and get in touch with us. Choose which vintage jersey that you want. And then for everyone else out there that didn't win, it's okay. We'll do Ask a FasCat number 19 in another 5 to 6 weeks, taking your user submitted questions. And you will have a chance to buy this jersey next week on our website. And I do believe we have a deal for Goo Energy, but I don't recall what that is off the top of my head. Sorry, Yuri. And that is it. That is our podcast for the week. So,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Jake. Always a pleasure. Thank you, Allie. Thank you, Rachel. So signing off from Boulder, Colorado. Remember to work hard, ride fast, have fun, and as always, FTFP.